Hello. So another Wellness Wednesday, and it is actually Wednesday, Gemma. Imagine I normally do these on like a random Tuesday, Thursday or something. So really good to speak to you. So Gemma is a coach. She's from Teen Conversations, and we're both coaches, but we've got a very different client base. So I wanted to talk to Gemma today because something I see a lot of with my coaching is a lot of my ladies are in their 30s, 40s, 50s and are dealing with late kind of primary school age children and teenagers that are struggling, and it does have a huge effect on the parent as well. I can't tell you the amount of coaching calls that I've had that my ladies' diets have been derailed through worries about bullying, worrying about university settling in, all the rest of it. So I thought, you know what, whilst our discussion today isn't directly related to exercise and diet, it's so related to who I deal with on a daily basis. So thank you so much for coming to have a chat with me. First of all, could you just tell us what you do? So I know you run your own business, but just what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Well, Annabelle, thank you for having me on today. And yeah, I work with teens, so mainly work with sort of 12 upwards. So kind of they've just started high school, and just helping them with navigate those teen years, particularly if they have experienced bullying, peer or friendship issues, because it does have such a knock-on effect to their school life, home life, and obviously onto mum and dad who might be worrying about how they're managing as well.
Mm. It's interestingly, Gemma and I were having a chat before before we started recording, and I was chatting about a best friend that I used to have and how things that were tough for me then still affect my friendships now in my 40s. So um it's easy to dismiss the teenagers as, oh, they've never had it so good, oh, they haven't got to worry about mortgages and this and that, but actually what happens in these pre-adult years can affect hugely into adulthood and obviously the whole household. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, we live in times with filters and internet and all the rest of it. The kids are under a lot of pressure. How can we be a good role model for our children, you know, boys and girls? Because I know you do deal with a lot of teenage girls, but you wouldn't not deal with a lad. How can we set a good example as parents?
Well, don't use the filters yourself. Yes, you know, the behavior that you want your children to follow is just make sure that you're doing it, because as they say, they might not always listen to what you say, but they tend to always be watching. So yeah, just set the example by being the lead. So if you don't want them spending hours on social media or using filters, then make sure you manage your own time on social media as well. Don't use the filters, and just have conversation, like actually have conversations with your children around what they think is acceptable amount of times to be using social media. Talk about the best type of people to follow. So, you know, are they inspiring? Are they informative? Are they interesting? Rather than just purely maybe entertainment, or getting caught up in following people who might make them feel worse about themselves. And I know as an adult, like I stopped following certain people because it didn't make me feel, you know, you can get a bit paranoid or if we start to compare. So just to be really aware of who you're
Mm.
following as well on social media.
Absolutely. You said an interesting thing to me, which has just occurred to me as being relevant before we did this as well. You were saying about your mum's apron and what it said on there, diet starts on Monday. So that's, of course, a really harmless bit of banter. But in your learning years, we're receiving messages all the time, aren't we, about dieting or eating healthy must be hard. It's not something for today because we want to enjoy ourselves. We'll put that horrific task off till Monday of eating well. And these are, as you know, from chatting and other videos that I've done, I like to do a lot of work with the subconscious mind. We know that that is formed, your beliefs, your habits, your views, where you feel that you sit in with the world, that's formed up to about 7 years of age. So how we are as parents is influencing our children hugely before they've even got to their teens. So, you know, if we are, and no one's perfect, but, you know, if we as women are always on a diet, always weighing ourselves, always talking about calories, yes, it is normal as an adult, but that can send out quite a harmful message to a child, especially one that's maybe dealing with a bit of puppy fat or whatever else. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, but my feeling is we want to model health over weight. So we're not talking about calories and centimeters and stones. We're talking about feeling good, which foods are going to make us feel good, which are going to serve us, rather than what we look like, etc. Do you deal with many, do you see that in your clients, in your young girls? Is there pressure, the pressure that I imagine is out there? Are they struggling with the pressures of social media and weight and all of that stuff?
Yeah, there is a lot of pressure from the social media, but they also put so much pressure on each other.
Right.
So they're constantly comparing themselves either to their friends or to their peers, who's popular, who's not, how popular they are, the reasons why they think they are or they're not popular. So it's not just the social media aspect, it's that they fall into that self-comparison trap. Well, and then put the pressure on each other. So it ends up in a bit of a loop, really.
Yeah, it is hard in those years. I remember that was 30 odd years ago that I was at that age, but I can still remember in the era that I was there, it was all about being skinny, and I was quite big at a certain age. So the people that were famous were all, or in the papers, were kind of blonde, petite, tiny, and then there's me at 5'11", built like solid build, we'll say. You know, different color hair, and you can kind of see teens as well say, well, I'm not that, well, where do I fit in? But this must not be any good then. So although you know, there's so many aspects to it, body image just must be quite a powerful one that you have to deal with on a basis.
Yeah, it does come up. Often it's more around the friendship and the peer side of things. So again, it's helping them to, if they are comparing their bodies, and it's like, what are they making that mean? So if they're comparing their, oh, my friend looks like this, or, you know, my friend gets bought, like whatever it is that's coming up for them, it's then looking behind, what are they making that mean about themselves? You know, what's the story they're telling them? And then underneath that, what's the belief that they have about themselves? And it's normally they don't think they're good enough. Like that's like a classic one that comes up, or they don't feel like they fit in, so that I don't belong. So although these experiences of them, you know, comparing or looking at other people, on the surface, you know, it sounds like a pretty negative experience. Actually, we can always use it to go a bit deeper and find out what really is going on for them. And then that's a much better way to look at other ways that they can build their self-esteem. So they don't end up in a fixing and solving, or if I look like this, if I weigh that, then I'll be happy. It's then helping them to find other ways right now. What can they do to actually enjoy their life and go and do the things they're actually interested in, or hang out with friends that they've got more in common with, that they don't feel that they have to put themselves under a pressure to either perform or to be or look a certain way.
Yeah, you gave me some really nice advice once. I'm sure it was you, actually. It was some time ago, so forgive me if it wasn't, but I'm sure it was you that said to me when I was having some issues with my son, about finding something that gives him confidence, that makes him feel good. So at school, we're measuring all our children on ability, academic ability, sporting finesse, all of this. If they're having a hard time socially and within the school curriculum, they might be an amazing footballer, they might be an amazing budding poet or artist. So if we can find our children something that gives them that passion, the kind of the drive to get up every day and do things, that's such a powerful tool as well. Like giving them the ability to be awesome at something that they might not get at school, rather than, you know, if someone tells us we're bad at maths or we're not very good at this, we'll take that on a subconscious level and probably live with that for the rest of our thing. I can't do that because I'm not good at that. So, you know, I've tried to do that with Ollie, getting him into scouts, getting him into other things where he can grow as a person and be awesome as himself, which is good. I think it's great, actually. On a side note, I must say, I think about it, that teens or children have access nowadays to such a much more a much kind of increased level of support with mental health and coaching. I don't know, 30 years ago I'd never even heard of a coach, apart from maybe a baseball coach or something that didn't interest me in the slightest. It's so good. Something that I learned in the last few years was that if you don't like someone or someone makes you feel bad, often that trigger is from within. So, and I've noticed a lot of teenage girls, I don't like her. Why don't you like her? And her being someone that's done absolutely nothing to you, but it's evoking an emotion in yourself. So, for example, things that might trigger me on Instagram, it's not someone that I've never met, that I can't possibly dislike someone from America that's annoying me. That's making me feel inadequate, bad about myself, low self-worth. That's the problem that I should be focusing on, not what such and such is doing. And of course, with a teen mind, you're not necessarily going to have the wisdom to recognize that. You might just take that aggression out on said person that you've decided you hate. So you know, how we look at things has certainly come on quite a bit, I'd say. And if only you were around a few years ago.
I say, if I could have been the person that I needed at 13 years old, things could have been different. But just to go back to what you said about confidence, I think it's important for teens to understand. So when I work with teens around confidence, is that we're not confident in everything. So it's like we've got this perception that to be confident, we have to be confident in absolutely everything. And that's not true, and that's not possible. And the other problem sometimes I find is that, you know, yeah, if they've got a mate who is like brilliant at a certain sport or the fastest runner or the best artist, it's so like they then think that what they do isn't good enough because it's not the best. And actually, sometimes I think we overlook some of the more simpler things that can make. So, for example, I had a girl and she didn't recognize that actually being able to stand up in class and read aloud was something to be recognized as being confident in. And we all know there's loads of kids that would hate to have to stand up in class to read, or you know, sometimes it's the more like being a good listener. Some kids are really good at just being able to listen to their friends. And I think it's all, you know, it doesn't have to be these amazing being the best at something to be confident. Sometimes it's the much more, you know, being kind, being like the smaller things that maybe get overlooked and help them to tap into actually, you know, you're really confident at going up to someone and asking them if they're okay, or you're really confident at this particular style in art, or whatever it is, but just that it doesn't have to be this magnificent thing and brilliant at everything to be confident in.
God, standing up and reading out in class, I think that's where my anxiety started. I can't bear it. It's literally, I'm still bearing the scars now of that kind of thing. Yeah, no, it's a very good point. I heard someone say actually a few, I don't know, it's probably some nonsense that I read on the internet, but it struck a chord actually. It said the way you talk to your children when they're younger, it almost becomes their inner voice. So if you are consistently, I mean, no one's I believe very few people are intentionally horrible to their children, very few, but we do have to watch our words. So if you're saying, and I have to watch it with Oliver, if I'm constantly saying, for goodness sake, what are you doing that for? Why would you do that? You're always late, you know, why can't you get it together? All these sorts of things, they're planting seeds, aren't they, for their self-worth and how they're seeing things. So that is not them, that's their behavior. Something that I've learned is, you know, if Oliver's done something bad, rather than me saying, why would you do that? That's really naughty. I'm really this, that, and the other. I'm saying, you know, I really didn't like how you behaved then. You know, I know you can do so much better than that. So you're not attacking. It's quite hard when you're a frustrated parent to not go into tell off mode. But if we can kind of support and understand a bit better, I found that's quite empowering. One question I must ask you actually, which I'm sure you can help me and many others with, is what if our and I say children, they're not really children as teens, but for want of a better word, what if we can't get them to talk? Because I'm sure other women on here can relate. The kids come in, how was your day? All right. What did you do? Nothing. Okay. So we start to think about open questions. What was the best part of today? Nothing. If they're a closed book, what signs might we want to look out for to know that our teen is struggling? You know, what are the things that you might suggest we look out for?
Okay, just to go back to kind of like the first part, is if you imagine that you got in from a full day of work and it was, how was your day? What have you been doing? Who did you play with? Who did you see? Like, it's quite a lot to deal with. And I think we need to remember that teens have been at school all day, surrounded probably by a lot of people that they don't want to be. That's a lot of energy. There's a lot of managing themselves between lessons, lunchtime, classes, to come home and then to have someone ask more questions and want more information. You know, we all just need a bit of time to decompress. So if that is happening, just like let them come home. Anything that's sort of grounding, even just getting out of the school uniform and putting on some home clothes. If it does mean that they have half an hour on their own just to chill out, let them have that time to decompress, and then to engage then in a conversation. Some of the best times are, you know, that not face to face. So if you're in the car or you've gone for a walk and the conversation can just open up more naturally rather than it feel like a barrage of questions as soon as they walk in the door. Sometimes children like in the dark, so when you're going to say goodnight and they're in bed, sometimes that can be when they open up, because they can kind of get it off without, again, that sort of full-on looking. So anything that, allow them some time to decompress when they get home. Some kids need like a shower, almost like, or a shake, like get rid of any energy, anything that's not theirs. And then when they feel more in that calmer state, then they're going to probably be more likely to open up. With regards to if your child is struggling, again, it depends. Look at your child as an individual, and it's about recognizing a change in their normal pattern of behavior. So if you've got a child who is generally well behaved, but now they're acting out, that could be a sign. If you've got a child that's normally quite sociable, but now they're withdrawn and they're not talking and they're not going out to the normal places with their normal friends or normal locations, that could signify. So it's normally at either ends of the scale, but it depends on your own individual child. So so any changes in pattern of behavior would be the first thing. For some children, it can come out somatically. So if they start experiencing like non-medical related headaches, stomach aches, tiredness, that's more of like their body's response to the stress. So if you're noticing maybe that the immune system seems much lower and they seem to be getting ill more, lacking motivation, and again, anything that's different to how they normally behave. So it's about being in tune with your own child and observing and noticing, like that's going to be the best, because you know, if they aren't going to talk, then you've got to be able to notice what's up, like what is different about them. And if they won't talk, or they're not, you know, you think of your child as more one that bottles things up. Obviously at this age, teens want their independence, so they want to try and work things out for themselves. So it might be that they try and work it out, but when that doesn't work, then they come to you. But for some teens, it'll be dependent on how you have responded to things in the past. So if they once came to you and they didn't realize that it wasn't the best time or inappropriate time, and your response was more like, what, like I haven't got time, or then they might you know, they might come to the conclusion that mum's too busy to talk to, or mum's stressed out. And if they recognize that a parent, you know, we're living in times where children are seeing their parents under more stress, and noticing that some children don't want to talk to mum and dad because they don't want to be a burden, they don't want to add more stress on mum and dad because they already recognize that they're under enough stress already. So from a parent standpoint, you know, if you have got stuff going on, if you are upset, if you have had a bad day, sometimes it's actually just saying to your teen or your child, like, work was really stressful, like, but I'm okay, this is what I'm going to do, you know, or because then it stops your teen thinking, have I done something wrong, what's wrong with mum, why is she nagging again, god, she's always miserable, like,
Yeah.
that's going to stop them. So if you can be honest with your teen, if you've had a bad day or you're feeling a bit down and they know it's not because of them, but also got it in hand and this is what you're going to do to help yourself, then they know that mum or dad is capable of managing their stress, rather than thinking, oh, mum bottles it, so I'll bottle mine up.
I think that's a really valuable point. You put on your group once, what were your experiences of seeing your parents deal with stress? And it's, you know, none of us are perfect. So I learned from that post. I've now made a point of allowing Ollie to see me upset, to cry, to be angry, obviously not out of control, but to see the different emotions and try and model a positive response to deal with that, because otherwise, how is he going to know how to deal with things? Because things are going to go wrong, and it's not a problem to cry, to show emotion, to say we've had a sad day. So to explain why we're behaving like that is probably quite a good learning point for them as well.
Absolutely.
Something I used to love doing with Ollie when he was really little. It's obviously irrelevant to teens, but if anyone's got younger children, I used to love those little things called worry monsters. So if you can't get your child to tell you what the problem is because they clam up, they sell these little teddies with a zip around the mouth. And if they're sad, you say to them, I've got a special, a really, really special thing for you. And you give them a piece of paper and a pen, obviously if they're old enough to write. And you say, when you go to sleep, you write down all your troubles and the worry monster will eat it. And by the morning, they'll all be gone. And if they're young enough to buy into that, they write their problems down, go to sleep. And as parents, we go in, we find out all the stuff we need to know. Sadly, that doesn't work with teens anymore, though. So how could we? You know, I've had personal experience when I know there's a problem and it's quite a big one and I can't get it out. I've tried being, you know, stressing how important it is. I've tried bribery. I've tried all these different tacks of going in. I've tried to be really strict. You've got to tell me. I've been chilled and I can't get it, whatever the it is. What would your advice be? Should I leave it? Or do you have any tips of the questions I might ask to get these things out? Because obviously as a parent, you can drive yourself bonkers worrying about what's going on.
Again, it would be looking at your own, like, it's going to be different for each child, so, or for each teen. So yeah, so again, like as you said, any open-ended questions, but almost like, I notice you seem really quiet tonight. Is everything okay? Or I know, so you've got some evidence to why you're kind of questioning if they're okay. So that can be a first. And even if they say like, I'm fine, then, you know, just allow them to say, well, you know, if you do want to talk about anything, then I'm here, and just letting them know that you are there for them. But just, yes, state what it is that you've noticed is different about them in their behavior or just their mood, and then just checking, you know, is everything okay? Is there anything you want to talk about? Is there something that I can help you with, or that someone else can help you with? Or I understand that you probably want to, maybe you're trying to work this out for yourself, but I am here if you need me to run your ideas by. So you're still letting them be in charge of whatever it is that's going on, because sometimes what they worry is that if they tell you, you then might make a decision that to go and take action on something that they don't want you to do. So they can trust that actually you will just listen, and together you can come up with a solution that you both agree upon, unless of course it's something incredibly serious that you do need to take action on. they're probably more likely that they then might open up to kind of come up with that idea. But often if they think you might do something, or either how you react, if they do tell you, you're going to go mental, you're going to get angry, so that will stop, or that you might take action that they don't want you to do. Like might be ringing the school up, or I'll ring up so and so's parent, and they're like, no, I don't want you to do that. So again, it's them trusting you about your reaction.
Yeah, so potentially before there's even a problem, it's a good opportunity to make sure you've got an open line of communication, to know that if minor things happen, you're not going to go off at the deep end. You're going to always act rationally. You're going to listen to the facts before making a judgment, because children grow up quite quickly, and it's very easy to go from a kind of tell stage of toddlerhood and primary school to actually now they're young adults, and we're still doing that. No, you can't. You are grounded. And of course, all that does, in my experience, I don't do your job, but in my limited experience, all that does is drive them back to ground, and they'll just start not telling you anything. So I've told Oliver recently that if he ever tells me anything honestly, he is wrapped in bubble wrap. He is immune from being told off. That grants him immunity to a telling off. So that now he'll come in from school, and the first thing he'll tell me is, right, this bad thing happened because, and what happened was, and I promise myself that I'm not going to react, talk, tell off, or anything until he said his entire piece. And then I model you. I do a bit of, how did you feel about that? Why did that happen? Would you have done anything differently? Rather than the kind of cycle that I had been stuck in before was tell off, because we all know that teens can start to rebel at this point. If they feel, I don't know why, but I suppose we've all been young once, they feel we can become unrelatable as adults. We've never been there. We don't understand. It was different in our day. We must have been born 500 years ago. So they'll try and figure it out themselves. And if they have got an open communication where they can sound things out, that's quite powerful. And of course, it's good for us. The benefit to us is we get to know what's going on and potentially assist. So yeah, how can we help ourselves? You can tell I like this subject because I've got about 1 million questions for you. So I find it much more upsetting and emotional to deal when my child is going through something than when I am. I don't really care what people think about me at this point in life, and it's not the end of the world. But if our children are struggling, it can become a huge stressor, which in my line of coaching will show itself as increased whine, emotional eating, all of the stuff that we're trying not to do. So how can we keep ourselves, maybe self-care, whatever you tell me, how can we keep ourselves healthy when our kids are struggling? Because we've got to be strong for them.
So the first thing I would say is sometimes we have to put down the magnifying glass and pick up the mirror and use your child. Like if something's going on for your child that is upsetting, that's obviously understandable. But it's what are you making that mean? And sometimes that can be what are you making that mean about you as a parent? So if your child's going through a difficult time, sometimes it's very easy then for parents to start to blame themselves, like, if only I'd done this, why didn't I? So it's about bringing it back to what are the beliefs you're then holding? And it's probably likely to be something like, the core, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or like coming back to those kind of more deep-seated core beliefs that you've then made up a story about your own parenting. So, if everything's going really well for your child and they're popular and they're happy, like, as a parent, that's going to feel quite easy and going to sail through. But if there is stuff coming up for your child and they are having a challenging time, help them, but also use that to look at what that's bringing up for you. Because I can say to you, coping mechanisms. So, classic ones: alcohol, drugs, overworking, sex, retail, like the classic overcoping coping mechanisms. So then we think, well, okay, I'll stop doing those, but I'll take up meditation, or I'll take up something else. And really all you're doing is, it sounds better, but you're just swapping one coping mechanism for another without actually getting to the root of why that is so upsetting for you. Because actually, if it becomes more about you and how you feel, then it becomes a you problem rather than a helping your child going through what they're going through.
It's very easy to start to live our children's life for them, and ultimately, I guess, our job as parents is to enable them to live their life. Depending on the age, obviously they are dependent still, but our job is to enable them successfully to live their life, not to create such a bubble wrap that they can't cope, not to shield them from any possible thing, so that as adults they go out into the wild world and absolutely crash and burn. We kind of have to let them safely live to their routine parameters, and keeping a check on how we handle that is important. I know when I've asked Gemma questions before, and I want you to tell me what to do, so I'll say, Oliver won't do his homework, what can I do, Gemma? And you say something quite powerful, you always bring it back to me. Why is that important? How does that make you feel? What difference will that make to the family? And all of these things that I'm overlooking, of course I'm going to Gemma, I'm saying, I want an answer, I want you to fix this for me, tell me what exact words I need to say to him in which combination to get him to do what I want. But the bigger picture isn't that, it's how we're managing the relationship, it's how we're interacting. When you start going into these deeper layers of what does it mean if he's starting to manage his own life, what does it mean to the family, what does it mean for your connection, how will it help him, we start to build a picture that has much more value, rather than going back into that tell. Because that is, it's incredibly frustrating as with children or teens, but it's so easy in the busy lives that we lead as parents. We haven't got time we feel we haven't got time for all this negotiation, all of this battle. We just want them to do it, so we will create the path of least resistance, which is often just tell, shout, get it done, go. Ain't nobody got time for this on a Monday morning. But of course the price you pay for that, the quick fix, is you're not solving anything, you're not enabling anything. And later on down the line, of course, it can bite you a bit on the backside, can't it?
Yeah, and no teen wants to feel like they're a problem that needs fixing and solving. And I think that shuts a lot of teens, because then it's like there's something wrong with them, where actually it's because we notice it on a behavior level, but it's like that iceberg, the behavior is the bit that we can see, but it's that underneath, the thoughts, the feelings, the beliefs, the emotions that they have about themselves or that come up for them, that's what's then driving that behavior. So if they're not doing their homework, there's probably, all right, no kid likes to do their homework, let's be honest about that, but if they can understand why that would be important to get their homework done, and that it's going to benefit them, then you've got more of a chance of them actually doing those things that they really don't want. They don't want to, but they know they have to do.
Yeah, and that's why you're so good at coaching, because sometimes as well children need to hear it from someone else, because mums nag, they almost don't hear anymore. It becomes white noise we're constantly saying, and as you say, we're dealing with the immediate issue, which is the homework. Professionally with your qualifications and things, that's not the issue. The issue is what's happening underneath. So I think coaching is an incredibly good job to do. It must be very fulfilling with teens and things, to find out that information. Now I know it's all confidential when you're dealing with teens, but to a degree hopefully you'll be able to communicate in some respect to mum what they need, what you can support them with, and kind of help them through these various milestones and stalemates that they get to. Is there particular danger points that you see with your clients, like, I don't know, A levels or puberty? Are there kind of particular sticking points or things that we should be aware of when teens are likely to go through it more?
It's
Or
normally whenever there's been like a change, whether that's from a change from middle or primary school to high school, or going, going up a year or going into GCSE year. So it tends to be quite often on these transitional times.
mm,
Even school holidays, if they've been, 6 weeks is a long time to be away, friendship, or even over the 2 weeks holidays, friendship dynamics can change because they might have gone away. They might not have spent as much time with their best friend, and that best friend has hung out with someone else. So they're going back, or if there has been like bullying in the year or the term before, everything might calm down or slow down or stop over a holiday, but then it's the anxiety or worry about going back into school that then, will it happen again? How will I cope? How will I manage it this time? So I mean, through these years, teens are going through so many changes that it could be anything that becomes an issue or happens. But just to go with the point you said about mum's voice, there is scientific evidence now that says from like the age of 13, 14, they've had enough of like mum's voice, and it does start to fade and just become like that white noise. So so I could say the same thing as you, but because I'm someone different, a teen is more likely, Ollie's been more likely to listen to me than he is you, even if we say exactly the same thing. And there's a good reason for that, and that is because this is the age where teenagers are going to go through the adolescent years to become young adults, and they need to be able to break away from mum and dad and get their own independence. So there is a reason for it happening, and it's a classic parent thing. My teenager doesn't listen to me anymore. It's like, yeah, but it's kind of an evolutionary reason as well for why it happens. So then it's making sure that who your teen is listening to, or whether, not that I'm here to give advice to teens, but where they're getting their information elsewhere then becomes very important. And it's not that they don't value what mum or dad has to say or to offer. It's just they as long as they hear it, but it comes from another source or someone else, then they're more likely to take it on board.
Yeah, I think as well, talking to someone in a professional capacity, and they're talking to you in confidence, without fear of judgment, without fear of consequence or punishment, or berating of all the things that us as parents might well do. It's a great outlet for someone who's struggling. So what might obviously you do one-to-one coaching, but what does working with you look like? How do you sort of package it? What do you do in terms of sessions? Tell us what you get up to with these teens.
Well, I always do like a initial session first, and we'll do an activity within that session, and that's just to find out like a big overview of where they are right now. And that is great, because if a teen isn't coachable, or there's not a connection made, or it's just not the right time for them, then there's no big follow-on commitment, but they would have got something out of it and off they go. What normally happens is that there is a connection, there's a rapport, and they recognize that coaching is going to have some benefit and value to them. And then I tend to run like a 10-week course online over Zoom, where we meet once a week and go through the coaching process. At the end of the 10 weeks, we wrap it up. And if there needs to be additional support, then work that out with mum and dad. And I also do like a mid-course and an end support conversation with mum and dad. So if there's any support that they need, or just a chat about how things have been going, from what they've noticed from their end. Obviously, there is confidentiality, and teens are very aware of that if they're at harm to themselves or to someone else, then I obviously have a duty of care to pass that information on. But generally the conversations are kept between us. If a teen wants to share with mum or dad or anyone else, that's entirely up there to them. They can do that. I provide them a workbook that's got loads of great tools and activities in. So if in the session I feel there's something that's going to be really useful to gain their sort of self-awareness and link the dots between what's happening and why that might be happening, then we've got that to work with as well. Or sometimes it might just be free coaching, and it's about where they are in that moment right now. So a parent might have a bit of an agenda as to what they want out of it, but sometimes you've got to kind of let that go a little bit and just trust that what comes up for your teen in that moment of what they're experiencing is where they need to be at that time.
Fantastic. And where can people find out about this? What's your website, social media, etc.?
So my website is www.awkwardconversations.co.uk. I do have a free Facebook group called Helping Teen Girls Build Healthy Relationships. So anyone who wants to come and join that, they can. I've got Instagram account, Awk Convos, and also a Facebook business page as well, Awkward Conversation. So come and find me.
So I will tag all of these on the video. That's fantastic. So I mean, it's such a big conversation, isn't it, to get into a small video, but hopefully well, I certainly know that a lot of my clients and people that follow me on social media are parents, and one of the best but one of the toughest jobs out there. So hopefully that's provided a few little snippets to help people along a difficult path. So thank you so much, Gemma. Is there anything else you wanted to add in yourself?
Just don't other, for transparency, I'm not a parent, but I wish that I had the support and additional support through my teenage years. But I'll just say, as parents, just trust that you're doing the best that you can. Don't don't blame yourself, put pressure on yourself, or berate yourself in any way, but just use it all as opportunities to learn and grow. This is, if this is your first teen, then you are navigating this time. It's the unknown. The unknown can be scary and exciting, and all of that together. So, I love going along with teens on this part of their journey to help them kind of move into the next phase. And yeah, just treat yourself like you would be treating your teen. So kindness, compassion, respect, but do that for you.
Ultimately, we're all just people. They may be little ones, but our approach must remain the same. Side note, I really don't think it matters if you have biologically birthed a child or not. Being a good parent isn't delivered with the placenta. We don't get a manual. So anyone can birth a child, but actually being a good parent is an entirely different kettle of fish. So we value your opinion and your learning and your studies, because I tell you what, we're all still figuring it out. So thank you so much for your time and coming on and sharing your pearls of wisdom. And I'm sure I'll be picking your brains myself shortly too.
Thank you, Annabelle. Thank you, everyone.
All right, catch you soon, Gemma.
Bye.
Take care.